Hey, it's Matt from Custom Car Grills here with a mesh install for the 2018 through 2021 Subaru WRX. In this video, I'll show you how to make the grill shown here, and it all starts with taking the stock grill off the bumper. And on this grill, the emblem was also removed to get up to the point seen now. Okay, let's flip this over and get to work on the back and remove some plastic welds. I'll get my Dremel out and equip it with their number 543 cutting and shaping wheel. The top of this wheel is highly abrasive and can be used to shave off the protruding welds in the areas that I'm working on now. Once they are grinded off, then these plates can be removed and thrown away, and now we're ready to gut out the center. So let's move forward on to cutting out the main center section by starting out on this lower edge. I'm trying to cut all the way through the solid area, but also staying about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch away from the edge. Continue on to the lower sides with the same cutting motion and depth while keeping a steady hand. Then make a connecting cut between the lower edge and the lower side sections. Now let's go for the top edge. This will be similar but different because there's now more open diamonds than elsewhere. Just be sure to save a little distance from the edge. We'll be trimming that back soon. If the cutoff wheel is not going all the way through the cut path, then grab an open-ended saw blade to finish the job. More than likely you'll need one of these for the lower and side edges, but there might also be a little spot on the top center that needs some attention too. The connecting cut on the side area can also be a little easier to get the correct angle on with the blade as opposed to the cutting wheel. With the initial cuts made, the center section can be lifted out and thrown away. This next step is optional because I'm not sure how fragile the clips on the back of the grill will become over time. These are hollow and I just feel like they need a little reinforcement, so I'll grab some plastic epoxy. The one I'm using is PlyoGrip Plastic Repair number 3, but many others could be used in its place that might be cheaper or more easily accessible. Just add a little bit to the hollow part of the clip. Not a whole lot's needed, and be sure not to spill any of the filler outside of the clip area. I used a brush to even out the application and then let it cure. Now back to the cutting, and this step is important to take note of where I'm cutting at. I'll be using a cutoff wheel in front of the remnants of the old grill, but about a 1/16 of an inch or less away from the distinct edge on the front of the grill. You can see right here in this cutting of the lower edge that I'm keeping a firm grip on the Dremel as I commit to making the cut. If you don't feel comfortable making the cut, it could be possible cutting a little more shallow and then sanding your way up to the front might be an approach. It takes a little bit more time but gets the results that you want. Here's another angle of the same type of cut. And if you're new to this, consider practicing on some of the center section that was removed just to make sure that you can get the consistency down right. The other edges will need the same treatment, and I found that this side was a breeze after making those long cuts on the lower edge. Making the connecting corner cut may feel unnatural, and be sure to keep an eye on where the wheel is cutting during this step. Once you have a big enough set of these cuts made, then a good portion of this can be broken off before moving on to other sections. The only real oddball area when it comes to the cutting is these tight corners on the sides. I can't get the angle of approach like the bottom grill until I shave down some of the bar remnants further. This can be a scary cut to make, but you'll be fine as long as the wheel doesn't touch the front edge that we want to keep clean. Once it's more manageable to get the wheel in the corner at the correct angle, then it should be a breeze to get the grill frame depth that you want. Well, okay, you do want to be mindful of the clip in the corner. Don't go crazy with the cut and also trim off the clip in the process. Take your time and maybe a couple of passes to refine the edge down to the right depth. And if the depth is a little bit off from the other edges, then just take the top of the wheel and whittle it down. Let's finish this cutting up with the top edge. By now, you should be comfortable enough to make this cut like this, and it's just a matter of keeping it straight and consistent. Then take out the excess depth and toss it out with the rest. With this type of cutting, it's inevitable that we'll have some burnt-on plastic bits on the back of the grill frame. Most of these can be picked off by hand, though if you have any stubborn ones, then making some light passes with the cutoff wheel will remove them. In regards to light passes of the wheel on the back of the grill, some feather light touches with the wheel can be used to straighten out any wavy lines you might still have. It's hard to film just how light I'm touching the frame here, but I'm shaving off just the smallest amounts possible. Here's a look at my finished frame. I have a good consistent depth going on, which is very important to this project. It's also important to note that there was no paintwork needed on this, which is a great added bonus that will save time and money. Before moving on, I also want to point out again that if you did the filling on the clip area, that you'll want to cut out any excess around the clips if you had any. Okay, let's move on to the mesh piece, and here's a quick look at the pre-made piece that we have for sale on our website. This is pre-cut and pre-bent specifically for the 2018 through 2021 Subaru WRX. We've cut these from our aluminum hexagon XXL mesh and finished it off with a gloss black powder coat. Installation starts with the gutted out frame face down, and then the mesh piece just fits onto the back like so with the bent tabs faced forward. Then I'll grab some cable ties and some soft foam. I'll use the soft foam on the painted part of the frame so that it doesn't get damaged, while the ties are going to be temporarily holding the mesh tight to the frame while we bond them together. The tail end of the tie can be fed through the mesh opening on the grill edge, while the head of the tie wraps around the back. I like to fasten the tie so that the head of the tie rests on the back of the mesh, and this gives the best hold of the mesh to the frame. It's also important not to over tighten the ties to the point where the grill frame is going to get distorted. In the end, we want the mesh to be tight up against the back, but not much more than that. Spacing and positioning of the ties isn't super important, but I like to keep them near the mounting tabs. Reason being is that if we have the ties between the tabs, that will limit how much surface area we can get the bonding agent into. Also, we want to be thorough with these ties, as we'll need full coverage all the way around to achieve a seamless effect. Once you're satisfied with the tie placement, use a pair of wire cutters to trim off the tail ends of the ties, and then let's get an adhesive. For these types of installs, I like using either automotive goop or Plyo-Grip Plastic Repair number 3. For this install, I'll be using the goop method. This stuff takes a lot longer to cure, but it's cheaper than Plyo-Grip and much more widely available. To dispense the goop, I'll simply use a toothpick. This is a cheap and easy way to control a precise amount of the glue and apply it with pinpoint accuracy onto the back of the grill frame. Placement of the glue is somewhat what you would expect. I'm just putting it in and around the mesh where the mesh is making contact with the back of the grill frame. Though it's super important not to spill any of this through the front. Be very mindful of that. The goop can be quite runny, and having a fan off to the side blowing on the grill can be super helpful, stopping the flow of the glue into other areas that you don't want it to spread to. It's also important to note that the goop will lose about half its volume after it's cured, so be sure to apply a little bit more than what you expect to need based on what you're seeing. Though I guess there is one exception to this rule. In the lower corners, you'll want to apply just a little amount. The reason being is that the lower corners are going to be a super tight fit as is, and we can't really build up the glue very much. Otherwise, this will interfere with getting the grill back onto the bumper. The top edge is quite a bit more flat than the lower edge, and while it's okay to build up the glue high here, also be mindful not to have any of it start oozing through the front. Again, having a fan blow on the glue will stop it almost dead in its tracks, and it's a great tool to use for areas like this. I waited about a full day and then came back and cut off the ties and threw them away along with the foam. The mesh install is complete and the grill's ready to go back on the bumper. Let's flip this around and see how it looks. Wow, check this out. The mesh looks seamless on the back of the grill frame. This whole thing looks a bit more sleek and sporty than what I expected. Let's take a peek at how this looks installed on the car. The picture here is actually a render of what I expected the grill to look as a straight-on view. And here's the actual picture of the customer install of the grill shown in this video. I'd say this is a pretty solid win all around and a big improvement over the stock grill. Overall, this was a fun install to do, and the fact that it can be done with basic tools over a weekend is a bonus for most owners. I look forward to seeing all the installs from other WRX owners in the future. Well, that's all I have for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and thanks for watching.